A while ago I was asked, Ole, what is street photography? What is it? And being me, I hadn't really given it any thought, so I answered, it's when you go out and shoot people and stuff. I could clearly see that the guy who asked me these questions was actually not impressed with my answer, but he spared me the embarrassment and just said, okay. But since then I tried to educate myself. I read the definition of street photography on Britannica, and I heard some another fancy academic definitions. I talked to photographers, I watched YouTubes, I read rules in street photography contests, and the answers, well, they vary a lot. But they all have one thing in common. Street photography is when you go out and shoot people and stuff, so I'm sticking to my original answer. I think that what street photography is, how you should do it, and why people do it, it is very different from person to person. And in this video, I'm gonna tell you my reasons. Street photography, travel photography, documentary photography, photojournalism, portraits, conceptual photography. All this is and more is what I see when I look at other people's and mine street photography. So in my opinion, you can't really answer what it is unless you know why people do it. For example, two people can be shooting side by side. One is doing it as a hobby, street photography. The other works for a newspaper that's photojournalism, and so they have doing the same thing for a completely different reason. And for some reason that's categorized differently, and also that might control how they approach it, because the one who is shooting for a newspaper is, well, probably going to be more aggressive in his manner to get the shot. Traveling and telling stories was the reason I started photography, and that's still why I do it, so that is my why. Like what I mentioned in the intro, street photography is when you go out and shoot people and stuff. I really don't care how other people categorize photography. I'm a photographer, a visual storyteller. That's my what. Being an introvert makes it a little difficult for me to just go into people's faces, go close and shoot them. The more I do it, the easier it gets, but there's always this question of how much in people's faces do you want to be? Bruce Gilden is an amazing street photographer. He is so in people's faces, so intrusive, that many people find him obnoxious. I actually don't. He does what he needs to do to get the photos he wants. He's not hurting anybody. Even if he's a little rough around the edges, his work is amazing. Personally, I'm not there. I wish I had the confidence to do what he does, but I actually don't see anything wrong with his approach. Taking people's photos without their permission is fine with me. When you're in a public place, you have no privacy. I mean, think about it. There are hundreds of cameras everywhere. The state is recording everything you do. That's a concern. Not people who are taking photos for pleasure. Which brings me to the perverts. Perverts that hides in the shadow with a long lens. I have much more issues with that than being in people's faces. That's just creepy. especially if you're photographing children. Would I mind if a stranger was photographing my children? It depends on how that stranger behaved. If he doesn't try to hide it, I can clearly see that this is someone just enjoying his photography hobby. I really have no problems with that. But if I see somebody sneaking with a long lens, hiding in the shadows, taking photos of my kids, I would question his intentions. He's trying to hide it. And that someone would have a problem with me. Does that mean I don't do candids? No, of course not. It depends on what I'm doing, the conditions I'm in. I've been to places where people can be extremely hostile if they see you're taking their photos. Me, I still want the photos, but I rather not have the confrontation. So in those cases, I keep a low profile. But I'm always careful about my behavior around kids. I also sometimes ask for people's permission to shoot them, even when people pose, and I even pose them sometimes. Whatever it takes to get the photo I want, I'm trying to create. I'm trying to make a living. Other people can just, have the opinion they want. I really just don't care. It's sometimes said that photographers are exploiting other people for personal gain. You'd be surprised how little gain there is actually from this, but that's another story. It is about telling people stories. It is often you don't realize the importance of a photo until whatever the photo is of is gone. You will see that clearly when you look at old photos, for example. I want to end this with showing you a few photos I took about 12 years ago in New York. For many, the mecca of street photography. I only had a few hours one evening and another few hours the next day. I was just there to catch a flight. It was the first time I ever did street photography. Sure, I had shot on the streets before, but not on a mission. I had seen a lot of photos from New York and I kind of knew, what I wanted. I even knew the look I wanted. When I walked around New York, I felt everything was kind of old and beaten down. So that's kind of the look I wanted in my photos, and I haven't re-edited those photos. They are the same as 12 years ago. But when I got there, I was just overwhelmed. I just stood there like a moron. I just shot something in every direction. I was amazed by New York, and I was nervous by the mission I was in. I wanted to shoot people, characters, like this one, but I was afraid to go close, so I only got snapshot like this. My camera gear wasn't great, and even if I knew all the basics, I lacked the experience to play with the settings. So I was mostly on automatic. I was mostly on P, which I do advise people to do if they are struggling with settings, but still they need to get a shot. That is no time to learn how to shoot manual. But if you want to be serious with the camera, with your photography, you need to invest the time to learn and understand the basics. And it goes without saying, but still you need to know how to operate your camera. Shooting people is just not enough. I mean, look at this photo. It's a woman. That's it. I worked up the courage to shoot her because from the distance she looked nice, sitting on this bench in Central Park. But when I got close, I was nervous and I just hurried to get a photo, thinking nothing about story or composition. But a little later, I shot this human billboard, and even if it's his back, I like the photo. I'm curious on what he's advertising. It's some tax stuff. It reminds me of something I would see in the third world country, advertising high-tech stuff like this, there is a little story there. And this guy, standing in the doorway in a black suit and a white shirt, I'm curious about what's inside. It looks like a gangster hangout. And that's something I want. Not revealing everything, but enough to make people wonder if there's more to this photo than meets the eye. Even if my New York photos are not great, I learned a lot from them. And I'm still learning by looking at them again, seeing what I would have done differently. And that has a lot to do with not being able to control my insecurity, not being afraid to just throw myself into this project and get the photos I want, even if it's Bruce Gilden style, because it meant something for me. I had my why. I wanted to make great photos. My biggest problem was my how, because I didn't go for it. And still today I regret it. Because although it's very likely that someday I will return to New York and I will be able to spend some time shooting there, I might not. Sometimes you only get one chance and you need to give it everything you got. Because it's about you, your work, your future. It doesn't matter what other people think of you. And the good news is nobody cares about what you're doing. Even if, once in a while somebody gives you an evil eye, 3 minutes later he will have forgotten all about you. People just don't care about you. That's it for now. If you come this far in the video, I'm assuming you liked it. And if there's something I hope you take from it, it's just do it. Just shoot. Overcome your insecurities and your fear of strangers, and don't let strangers dictate your work. Just step out of your little frame, your little box. It is fun out there, and it is perfectly safe. Don't make your next trip be like my New York trip. Regrets that you didn't do what it takes to get the shot. Like I said, you might not have another chance, so just go for it. Having said that, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Goodbye.